November 10, 1975. Travis Walton was found after 5 days missing along a roadside near Heber-Overgaard, Arizona. What exactly happened to Travis, and where had he been all that time? Only he knows what he had been through in those terrifying days. Travis, now 63, was a young logger working with his colleagues in Sitgreaves National Park near Snowflake, Arizona. On the day he disappeared, everything seemed to indicate that it would be a day like any other for each of the loggers who, after a hard day's work, were returning home. Each one in their trucks, a total of 6 members of the team were on their way back to rest, tired and exhausted, when suddenly they came across a bright light in the forest that they thought might be a fire. They decided to investigate before reporting it to the authorities. Big mistake. It was not a fire. It was not even in the forest, but above it. According to their testimony, it was a giant flying saucer that was about 30 meters above the ground. Travis got out of the truck to take a closer look, but it was at this moment when the strange flying object began to emit strange sounds and move frantically. Terrified, Travis's only thought was to get away from the object as fast as possible, but before he could, a beam of light appeared from the bottom of the craft that forced against the ground. His 6 colleagues saw what had happened and panicked, fleeing as fast as they could to their trucks. Stunned and astonished, they realized when they were some distance away that someone was missing: Travis. When they returned, they were met with the eerie loneliness of the place. That did not include Travis. Mankind has always looked to the skies for meaning, but as our yearning for knowledge has reached farther into the depths of space, the search becomes for the answer to the question, are we alone? If you seek the truth, like, subscribe, click the bell icon. Join us. This is what the world needs. This is disclosure. Beyond sightings and close encounters, there are experiences that people among us have lived that go beyond what we have ever been able to imagine. Terrifying, bizarre, inexplicable experiences that have often made us doubt the goodness of UFOs. We are talking about extraterrestrial abductions, mysterious and terrifying incidents that have been part of the whole history of our humanity. Imagine remembering having no recollection of where you'd been or who you'd been with for a large amount of time, with the only thing you recall being a strange light before lapsing into darkness. Just as it happened with police officer Herbert Schimmer, who was performing his respective patrol routine, when suddenly in the distance, he noticed something that seemed to be a truck with big red lights. As a good officer, Herbert decided to approach to make sure that everything was all right and that there was no problem. But he was in for a surprise. The lights were part of a strange oval structure that seconds later took off, leaving a strange kind of fire in its wake. After what happened, Herbert realized that it had been more than 3 hours since he had arrived at the incident site. What had happened? Maybe only and perhaps his abductors might know the true answer. What had happened to Travis instantly provoked a great wave of enthusiasts of the UFO phenomenon, and along with them, many scientists and politicians interested in knowing what had really happened. Without knowing it, Travis had experienced what would become one of the most famous extraterrestrial abductions in history, from which books, series, and movies have emerged. Many skeptics really doubt that it was all true, but the existing evidence seems to prove the opposite. After each of the loggers witnessed Travis's strange disappearance, they immediately went to notify the police of everything that had happened, telling absolutely everything with every single detail. At the time, the skeptical police did not take these accounts as true, but rather Travis's disappearance was taken as just another police incident rather than an unexplained event. Among each of the investigations made into Travis Walton's whereabouts was the possibility of homicide by one of the witnesses, who had a previous criminal record. To rule out the possibility that they were responsible for his disappearance, the police searched insatiably for Travis for 3 days, with the help of helicopters and dogs, but to no avail. There was no trace that could indicate the whereabouts of the young logger. Had he succumbed to the elements? Had he been kidnapped and hidden? Although nothing could be proven with certainty, the days of Travis's disappearance were a living hell for the group that were with him on the day of the disappearance. Imagine being charged with manslaughter for reporting your coworker missing. They were tried socially and legally, accused of manslaughter by the entire nation, and with the firm certainty that the abduction was a total lie to hide the supposed crime that had happened. Each of them was given a lie detector test at the Arizona State Public Safety Office, with the utmost care administered to take the test because the murder charge. Was Travis really abducted by things not from this world? Or did his coworkers have something to do with his disappearance and make up the UFO story to cover their tracks? After the grueling interrogation, each of the 6 members of the group passed the rigorous polygraph test. However, despite this, rumors and national tension persisted as they searched for answers to what had happened. No one believed any of the members who had witnessed Travis's abduction. The highly qualified polygraph examiner, member of the Arizona State Polygraph Association, Cy Gilson, wrote in his report that the 6 loggers had told the truth and commented, "The only thing I can tell you is that they passed the test." After so many investigations, everything seemed to become clearer and clearer. Each of the members were interrogated in separate rooms by Sheriff Marlon Gillespie, who would later also announce in the American newspapers that, "I am sure they saw a UFO." On the 5th day of the disappearance, Travis's family received a phone call. The caller claimed to be Travis Walton. Travis's family and best friend Mike Rogers could not believe it. 5 days had passed since his strange disappearance. Without a second's hesitation, they all set out to find Travis right away. Upon arrival, they all came upon a Travis who was barely regaining consciousness and was lying on a cold pavement west of Heber, Arizona, next to the payphone from which he had made the call. He was barely speaking and was in a very deteriorated physical and psychological state. Everything changed when police and the public learned of Travis Walton's discovery alive. All had to recant everything to do with the possible murder and the guilt of the 6 loggers. The days passed in total silence and unparalleled tension. Everyone wanted to know what had really happened to Travis that night. Thankfully, he was found, but he wasn't alone. He accompanied by an incredible story. Walton's tale later became an international media story, which years later led to the creation of the movie Fire in the Sky. Thanks to this, it became known to the large research groups that were behind Travis's true story, who eventually discovered physical evidence proving the visit of extraterrestrials to our planet. What had been the events that Travis Walton had experienced? Had he really been captured by aliens? According to Travis's account of what had happened, he claimed to remember a loud thud against the ground and that he woke up in a hospital-like room. He was lying on his back and slowly regained consciousness, feeling a lot of pain in his head and chest area. He said with certainty that he was being watched and detailed by strange creatures with bald heads no more than 5 feet tall. They were white, hairless, and with very large heads and eyes. Upon seeing them, Travis became nervous and aggressive. He hit and pushed them away from him, then jumped off the table, but they started to come towards him, so he grabbed an object nearby and threatened them. The beings, observing Travis's attitude, turned around and left the room. Travis was afraid that these strange beings would return, so he fled as fast as he could. Disoriented, he found a kind of cockpit where there was a star map in front of a chair. He suddenly encountered another being with a more human-like appearance, tall, muscular, and with brown hair. Feeling he could possibly trust this being, he tried to talk to it, but it did not respond. Rather, he was taken to another room where there were more beings with human qualities who put a mask on him that rendered him unconscious. The last thing Travis remembers was lying on the floor, almost passed out, as the flying saucer took off at high speed in an upward direction. To him, what followed was apparently a few hours of unconsciousness, but in actuality, 5 whole days had passed, during which only his captors truly know what transpired. While some may dismiss the fictional interpretations of his story as nonsense, what remain are actually more questions than answers. If you're as interested in the mystery as you are in the actual explanation, like this video and subscribe. Join the conversation of disclosure.